investment banking if they're not doing things the way you would hope that they do them. Any of you invested in the market, by the way? Does anybody know what graphene is?
No, I've heard of it. It's a compound, correct?
It's a carbon compound. It's 1 molecule thick. It dissipates heat and cold almost instantaneously, and it's 100 times stronger than steel. So if you have something that's this thick, maybe 8 or 10 or 12 molecules, and you make a sheet of it, and you turn it into the hood of a car, or the bumper of a car, or the side of a car, we get to play bumper cars all day. It's 100 times stronger than steel. You know how you hit something now and it crumples? Yeah, it wouldn't do that. You can make clothing. It's soft, it's durable. Dry it out, air condition it. You can run gold through it and exotic elements. It's really a cool material. The problem is we don't, when we manufacture it, the edges are razor sharp. We don't know how yet, as far as I know, to do that. To make it a commodity that we can sell into clothing, we can sell into part. Everything can be made out of graphene if they're successful in the manufacturing process. So if you had a little excess cash, you can still buy stock on margin, but use your brains about it, you know? Make sure you pay it off so you own it. What would happen if suddenly graphene becomes the article of manufacturing? Eh? Super rich. I knew a fellow, $10,000 bought a stock company, and a year later realized it wasn't making the money he was hoping. He got his money back out, hadn't lost anything, hadn't made a whole lot, maybe 1,000, but started his own tire business, very successful, Northern Michigan Richards Tire Company. 10 years later, he kicked himself right in the butt. You know what stock he bought? Intel. When it was a baby company. Well, no one knows. No one knows. Same thing happened with Michael Dell. I don't think he ever graduated college. He just started building computers in his dorm room.
No, he did not.
And look what he got out of it. And tons of people do that. You know, they happen to, but you can buy stock and you can get in on the bandwagon. Oh, I shouldn't say this. There are companies right now that are selling medical cannabinoids. Canada was, I think, totally legalized. Was it October 31st? You just need a little money, people, to invest. Now, you realize when you invest, you always risk, whether it's a little risk or a big risk, but there's ways out there to secure your future. Any questions about any of that? Okay, so let's finish a little bit with the discussion then. So, how many, given what you learned today, are okay with welfare? We all get some of it. It's like biting the hand that feeds you. What's the proper distribution? Like corporations get 50% more than people do.
I think my biggest problem with the corporate welfare is when you run into things like the corporate bank bailout, where, I mean, and then, you know, the corporate bank bailout happens, and then we find out about Wells Fargo pulling their little game of selling a certain product to people and not telling them. It's like, okay, that's
fraud.
That's fraud. That's deception. And we came in and bailed you out because...
Actually, we didn't. That wasn't part of the mortgage crisis. Let's distinguish between the two.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they didn't get help, but there's a real line of difference between what they got set up for, and that was set up in '65 with the HUD program. Government wanted everybody to get into housing. And look, you can get into legitimate housing. There's programs out there all over the place. You should think about doing it. By the way, you all have student loans? If you do, when you get done, you have a 6-month window. There are companies out there that will let you consolidate your loans. Both my youngest one came out of Michigan State with 42 grand. And I talked to him immediately. I said, I'll give you the names of these companies. You got to call them. You got to consolidate all your loans. Don't leave anything out. They'll let you do it one time. You get all the loans. You show it to them. They will give you a reduced interest, very much reduced. He's paying like $675 a month. He's down to about $285 a month. A couple of times when he was between jobs, he called and he said, can I have a deferral for 1 or 3 months? They gave him a deferral. You keep payments going, and actually your credit score goes up. And it's a way to reduce your monthly liability. They don't do away with the whole debt, but it gives you a way to manage it so that you can go on with your future. You can begin to make some wealth, pay off your debts, be debt-free. It is possible to live debt-free, you know.
If I continue on my path, I'll be over $100,000 in federal loan debt by the time I'm done.
I know. And frankly, look, I'm gonna say so. It's a bait. When did you all start getting credit card applications when you were still in high school? Did anything come to the mail?
18 years old.
Yeah, credit is debt. It says if you can't wait for it, we'd be glad to give you money, and then you go in debt. And once you're in debt, you're in debt. It affects your credit immediately. Okay, I don't mean to preach to the choir, but look, there's ways to handle your finances so we don't get into these crises again. Okay?
But you also have to build your credit, so it's
Yeah.
Say what?
Cycle.
I know, like you also have to build your credit even.
Well, you do, and there are ways. People, I mean, I'd be glad. I'd be glad to do it privately. I mean, when I work for Block, there are ways to build your credit right away. It's maybe little steps, but if you never take little steps, you never go anywhere with it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I hate going into credit with anything. Like I like to pay things off right away. I hate even like the thought of a credit card, but I have to do it.
Debt consolidation is really a positive. The credit people look at that as because they put you on a limited time frame. When I went through, well, when I came down here taking my dad, I had a large amount of debt that I had accrued, and I had a credit card that gave me 1.5% forever. And next thing I knew, it went up to 19.65, and I freaked out and called him. And it turns out that the federal government, after the crisis, decided they wanted Americans to be in less debt. We're in trillions of dollars of debt. And so what they did is they raised the interest rate to make it unattractive to borrow money because you owe huge amounts of money. So I said, well, this is not fair. I haven't done anything wrong. They said, call this company. It was a debt consolidation company. So I called them. It's called Take Charge America. I'm not advertising anything. Out in Arizona, they took a small fee of $40 a month. They got me back to 1.5%. It was a 5-year limit. I could pay it off anytime I wanted without a penalty. And at the end of 5 years, I'm debt-free again, and my credit score is the envy of people. So there are ways to manage debt, but once you go into debt, you're in debt until you pay your way out of debt. And debt always increases. They tempt you with, we'll pay the minimum charge. Well, then you always add more than you end up paying off. That's the way, I'm not saying they're evil, I'm just saying that's designed to keep you in debt. Okay? So there's ways to get around it. Real reasonable ways to, especially when you get out of school and you start to make wealth. You may only have a little, but there's ways to make wealth. You miss one payment on anything, they crash your credit. So if they want $25 a month and you send them a check for $10 and they take it, they cannot crash your credit. That's a contract. You pay every bill on time, even if you pay less than it. You call them, you talk to them. At one point I was in business, I was out in the woods, I was cutting trees, and we bought a tractor, and the market collapsed. It was when President Carter was president. He didn't cause it. Interest rates went to 19.5%, couldn't pay off our loan, and I called the bank. And a fella helped me deal with it. He was on the board, he was a doctor, he helped me deal with it, and they dissolved the debt. We were okay. And then about 2 years later, I wanted to buy a car. And I just needed like $2,000. And I went into the same bank, and the guy who dealt with me said, sure, I'll give you the money for the loan. He says, but I can't open the account for less than $5. And I said, I only want $2. And I got up to leave. He says, where are you going? I said, well, I don't want to go in debt. He says, we won't go in debt. Let me give you $5 and go up to the teller and give her $3. And then you'll owe us the $2,000 that you wanted. I said, why are you doing this? He says, because you called us and told us you were in trouble. Most people don't say anything. We can work with people who talk to us. We can't work with people who don't communicate with us. They don't like having debtors. They carry stuff that's no good for them. All those houses since 2008, I mean, try going into one of those houses. Those are ugly houses.
What house?
The houses they got out of 208 that just have sat there for years. They call them as-is houses. You can't look in, you can't see if the electricity is, they give you a discount, they want to move it. They don't want the house, but oftentimes you got a lot of money you got to sink into them. They don't want that. That's a problem for them. So if you can communicate with them, there's a chance you can work out a deal. You can say something, I'm sorry.
I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole, but what's your thought process on limiting the EBT, or what's now known as SNAP? I have a big issue with the fact that people who, and I'm sure this percentage is small, but I feel like people who have that food benefit, at least in the circles I know, they're too likely to go into Walmart or 7-Eleven and buy Mountain Dew and Doritos, and granted they can't buy alcohol, but I've even heard of them getting their cash assistance, which is literal money in their hand, and then go, buy cigarettes or beer.
Work at a grocery store, bud, and you'll see it.
Oh, I know. Well, and that's, do you think there is a way to limit that down and put it in a program like WIC or
Yeah, I think they should do it with WIC, because WIC is very specific on what you can buy. You can't even buy a certain flavor with WIC.
There's a certain weight in like cereal.
Yeah. They're very strict on it.
Yeah, it depends. It becomes a libertarian argument again. How much control do you want to have, or let the government have over your life? There's reasonable controls, and then there's controls that many people would say, well, this is unreasonable. Is it reasonable to have to wear a seatbelt? Well, the facts say yes. Some people wear them and they die. That's a fact, too. And some people use that as a reason to say, I don't want to be forced to do something I don't want to do. Well, here's the dilemma. It's always been a dilemma. How much control do we want the government to have? That's why the Constitution limits government's involvement in our lives. So, yeah, it may be profitable. Should we go into schools like we did and tell kids what to eat, and they sit down, they look at that and go, oh, what is that? And then they just dump it in the garbage, it's money down the toilet. Or do we let them, drink sodas and pops and candy for lunch because that's what they want to eat? It's a dilemma. We have to work it out as a society.
In high school, I'm older, but when I was in high school, I can legitimately remember when Pepsi Cola came in and everywhere you looked, there was a soda machine.
Absolutely.
There was a time where that wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
Remember that filling it with healthy stuff?
I hate to date myself. I remember when cigarettes were $1 a pack. What? What is it, $5 1/4 now? $6, $7 a pack?
Easy.
Yeah. Well, government's involved. That's why that happened. They jacked the tax up on that so that trying to discourage people. I don't think it's discouraged a lot of people. So in general, welfare, do we understand welfare? What I want to do on Wednesday when we get together is I want to present you with capitalism, which is at the very root of our system of economics, without the politics. Explain how it works, and then the adjustments that we've tried to make along the way to make it more equitable for people's participation. Now, there is something to contrast with it, and it's called socialism without the politics. Socialism initially was invented to correct the abuses of capitalism. Capitalism can be very abusive through monopolies and collusions, price fixings, and whatnot. Now, it went that way politically, and frankly, the capitalism that we practice today is not like the inventor intended it to be. But it's a system we still embrace. It works, and then it also doesn't work. So we can talk about that when we get together. The nuts and bolts of this, I can't emphasize this enough, are important for your quizzes. You have 2 left. I sent everybody out an email about your get-out-of-jail-free card. If you want to use it, the test or the retake has to be done by December 2nd. You do not have to use that card. If you retake a quiz, whatever grade you get is the final grade. I don't go into dropping lowest grades because the course is worth 104 points. You already have half a grade of extra credit built into it, eh?
December 2nd.
December 2nd is when I want them taken by. Yeah, because I have administrative work I have to do, even though it's, what, the 8th or the 9th, I think, before grades are due, yeah. So if you want to use it, it's your choice. If you do worse, you do worse. Just accept that fact. It's a good way to boost your score a few points if you want to, and it has to be done in the next, I think I said it was 3 weeks. There's 3 weeks, I think, or 2 weeks.
Yeah.